getting up and taking everything to the trash. Now, for everything, I'm going to ask you, once you finish eating, even if we're outside, would you please put your mask on? Still COVID mask going on, so we want to be sure we protect each other and keep everyone safe. For some really special and some pretty surprises are going to come out today. Each of you should have got our long, extensive program, and if you don't, please look and share it with someone that has. We can. We got some special guests that we have today. We do have our presiding bishop who was in our worship service, and Bishop Emeritus Bolick will be with us as one of our special guests. Tammy Jones-West from the Senate office is here. And I think we have some the community, our special guests that are out that were members of the community where Greg is serving. Greg is really our friends, brothers, and sisters here in Hendersonville. And we want to thank them and thank them for being here. I want to give a special recognition to the Williams family as they shiver in the cold. And you're going to hear more from them later. First, we're going to start off with remarks given to us by Bishop Emeritus, Bishop Leonard Bolick. Bishop Bolick is serving North Carolina for 18 years as our bishop before retiring. He's taken a new lease on life by becoming the new interim executive director at Novus Way Ministries up in Arden. But the special thing, if you'll notice, when Greg was brought as our senior pastor, he was the bishop who installed him to start our 16-year journey together. So Bishop Bolick, I welcome you, and it's all yours, sir.
Well, what a glorious service that was. And Greg and Brenda and family, we love you and appreciate you so much. The year 1916 was a really special year. As we think back about what was taking place in 1916, bread, a loaf of bread, was 8 cents. You could buy a pound of coffee for 30 cents. You could buy 10 pounds of potatoes for 25 cents. Gas was 16 cents a gallon. And the average home in the United States of America cost $3,500. And in the United States in that year, the average male made $700, and the average female, if she worked outside the home, was about $350. That was the first year that there was blood transfusion. That was the time when the PGA actually began. That was the year that Emma Goldman was arrested because she was talking about birth control and recommending it. It was the year, or it was one of the years that we were in World War I. We invaded Cuba for the 3rd time. The Boy Scouts of America began. The Cleveland Indians thought it might be a good idea in 1916 to actually put a number on the back of the baseball jersey. But they tried that for one game and decided it wasn't a good idea. And it was also the year that Coca-Cola developed the formula that they use today for Coke. That was also the year that Grace Evangelical Lutheran Church in Hendersonville began its ministry. And we decided that there needed to be a place here for Lutherans that could lift up the idea of we're set free by God's grace through faith, we're saint and sinner, and we just needed that Lutheran presence. So we're thankful today for that glorious history and what happened in 1916. 16 years ago, Grace, after having many pastors through the years, decided to call Pastor Greg, and Greg and Brenda came here to be your pastor. And then Ken and Catherine came, and then Alfredo and Alexandria came. And what a wonderful team that has been through these years. It's let's just give that team a hand. I remember when Grace Church was looking for a pastor, and it had been a kind of a challenging situation. So the call committee was having a difficulty finding a pastor that they thought was a fit. I mean, all pastors have gifts. The key is, how do you get a pastor that fits with the needs at a given moment in time? And a lot of times congregations would suggest names for a pastor who had no idea of moving. I called Greg, and I said, Greg, I said, it's a great congregation. I said, they have a lot of unbelievably gifted people. They just need someone to kind of point them in the right direction. Greg said, well, let me think about it. Let me talk to Brenda. And a day or two later, he called back, and he said, I talked to Brenda, I prayed about it, and I think that I'm willing to at least talk to Grace Church. He said, but really, I don't have any thought that I'll go there, but I'll at least talk to them. Well, you know the rest of the story. Greg ended up here, and it was a wonderful fit. He's been a marvelous guide, and he's had a wonderful team. Not just the pastoral team, but so many of the people that have worked here. It's really been a blessing. When Greg was a little boy, you knew it was coming, Greg. When Greg was a little boy, his mother said, Greg, I'm going to fix dinner, but I'd like for you to go outside and play while I get dinner ready. So about a half an hour, I guess about an hour probably, he came back in, and he was muddy from head to toe. Believe how dirty he was. So she said, you're going to need to go take a bath. And he said to her, Mommy, who am I? And she thought he was playing some kind of a game. So she thought she'd play along, and she said, I know who you are. You're Superman. And he said, no, I'm not Superman. She said, well then, you must be Batman. And he said, no, I'm not Batman. She said, well then, what about Robin, the boy wonder? And he said, no, I'm not. And he said, you know, the little tear coming down his muddy cheek, he said, you know, the woman down the street was right. And his mother said, well, what did the woman down the street say? He said, she told me that I was so dirty that not even my own mother would recognize me. Well, I'll tell you, Pastor Greg is a literal Superman in so many ways. He's brought this marvelous congregation forward in beautiful, outstanding ways. And he's been accompanied by Wonder Woman. So and thank you for your ministry.
Thank you, Bishop Bullock. We really appreciate that. Now, on your program, you'll see that Pastor Hill is next. But before we call up Pastor Ralph Hill, we have a little special presentation. So Joy and George, if you would come forward, please.
It's a beautiful day, surely the day that the God sent for this celebration. In planning for this, we had contingency after contingency, what ifs, what if, but it's here, it's beautiful. Thank you, God. As we welcome you to retirement land, of which a lot of us are familiar, we have some things to help you transition. There will be changes in your life, like watching the whole game instead of going to bed at halftime. You might even try sitting in the same pew on Sunday mornings. You won't get holidays anymore, but my son says, "Oh, Mom, every day's a holiday to you and Dad." To start you off, we have a collection for you. This one. It's a collection of wines from around the world. Everyone from a different country, all red, all bold, all lustrous. There's even a bottle of French champagne in there, just in case Wake Forest keeps winning, or possibly even for tonight. You never know. But it's real French champagne from the Champagne district of France. So that should get you started. You're welcome. And by the way, the owners over at the wine shop said, "Oh, you must be Rachel's. That's Rachel's mom and dad." I don't know how they knew you, but it was like, "Oh, that's Rachel's mom and dad. We know Rachel." But Rachel and Nick, I'm sorry. Next comes a gift of roses, but not just any roses. We wanted to make them special. So we went to our resident gardener, Rod Hansen, and said, "Rod, could you create us a rose that would stand out and be just outstanding forever?" We think if you plant them and nurture them, you can probably share the blooms for the rest of your life. Show him what Rod came up with. Now you are all set for the days of wine and roses to come. Congratulations.
Thank you, and we know that you will be cherishing this for a long time to come. Our next speaker is Pastor Ralph Hill, and Pastor Ralph, okay, great. Pastor Ralph is from the wonderful, wonderful town of Chapin, South Carolina, which is where us Derricks kind of hail from as well. It's great to have Pastor Ralph. He is the senior pastor at Mount Horeb Lutheran Church there in Chapin. And he previously served us here at Grace for a little over 8 years as our associate pastor, leaving just before Pastor Greg came, or about the same time that Greg was transitioning in. And Pastor Ralph has got some great stories that he wants to tell. So Pastor Ralph, please come up.
To it. Good to see everybody, grace and peace, and just a joy to be back. Good to be with you. Some of the stories will be much better told after I visited Greg before they go to bed one night after we've had a couple of around-the-world bottles of wine together. But I did sit down the other day and just was thinking about you, Greg, and I was thinking about the wonderful ministry here at Grace, and I decided I would go ahead and write a few words down, and this is what I wrote, so I just want to share that. And I'm going to end with a song that we'll hear together. You know, often when we talk about pastors and congregations, we use that image of shepherd and sheep. And we hear more about the sheep than we do the pastor often, unless it's behind closed doors. The sheep, we all say, are stubborn. They get lost. They get into trouble. They're tempted. Be careful when you walk by still waters because they got a lot of depth and danger, and you might drown. And so still water still becomes kind of a metaphor. A good shepherd pastor is one who helps people with distractions, with struggles of life, with the burdens that we do bear, which can saturate our lives. So the pastor is to watch over them, to care for them, to walk with them, to look for them, to be concerned about them, and even carry the weight of them, not only figuratively, but spiritually, and even sometimes literally. And in the process, though, pastors do experience joy because of them. And when we see relationships heal and reform, when we see that spark of inspiration that God has been a part or reintroduced to their lives, we do experience joy. Pastors shed tears of grief, but also tears of joy. And good pastors, like Pastor Greg, use their authentic selves to do their best. And so with God's guiding, and pastors try to do shepherding through the difficulties of life. And I think God rewards us with abundance and spiritual fruit that is incredible when we do walk with parishioners. But jokingly, pastors are accused of shearing their sheep, and maybe you've heard that metaphor as well, instead of sharing the gospel. And the pastoral speak the truth and love response is usually, well, actually, it's kind of good for you to have your wool sheared off. I don't know if anybody saw, but there was a meme recently where they found a lamb or sheep that was lost in the wilderness for 5 years, and it was almost dead because it had so much wool on it, 75 pounds of wool, that it almost died, and they found it and brought it back to life. So we all need to be sheared. And some of us pastors aren't brave enough to shear our people well enough. But we do it in love. Believe us, we do it in love. We all need to be freed from that worldly weight which grows thick and weighty, that diminishes the joy of life. And when sheared of this weight, we do become lighter. We do become nimbler and sweaterless swimmers and spiritually refocused. And transformation does occur. And I just want to say that Greg is a wonderful and caring pastor and a friend, and he's been that for me for more than the time that I can even remember. I believe God has used Greg to bring transformation here at Grace, that his life as a shepherd, as a leader, as a sojourner, as a husband, as a father, as a grandfather, as an example, as a conveyor of grace at Grace, has been one of caring, concern, and love. Greg has an appreciation for the gospel of Jesus Christ, an appreciation for the gift of relationships, an appreciation for the gift of creation. And he knows the blessings of family, the precious gifts of being able to serve God and people throughout his life. During a confirmation camp for many summers, which is where I kind of got to meet Greg, we were both associate pastors with other lead pastors. One of the lead pastors, you may not know him, but Palmer Clemmer used to tell us, if you're not the lead pastor, the scenery never changes. You're kind of like one of those trudge dogs on an Alaskan thing, and all you see is somebody's tail in front of you all the time. But during those weeks at Lutheran, at confirmation, Greg and I, for some reason, would be the only ones that would get up early and go walk around camp and just listen to nature, and we would share it with each other. We would go for this walk around camp, begin the day breathing, experiencing the outdoors, and then we would share our ministries and our faith and our friendship. And we would share stories about each of you in loving, caring, compassionate, shepherding ways. And that way we would come back with a smile. But also at camp, we were often partners for a particular day of teaching activities, and I can recall times when he and I together were selected to be the leaders for that day, and we would lead in skits and other things. One time we were surfer dudes, and we were lifeguards, and we taught people about how to surf for Christ and to care for other people by looking for them when they drowned. One time we were Gabriel and God sitting in a heavenly waiting room, waiting for the birth of Jesus, and I think we were in robes or something like bathrobes, just getting up in the morning, because, you know, God needs a break sometimes. And then we would talk about the ways God has tried to love and care for creation. Sometimes we would be the parents or the pastors and recreate the families that are trying to get their kids to go to camp and what some of those struggles must be like to try to get the kid out the door. We portrayed characters in the Good Samaritan story, where we tried to show how busy our lives can often get, and obstructions that we have, and even addictions that we have can get in the way of what God calls us to do, which is to care for those in need. So Greg and I have shared many laughs, we've shared tears, we've shared moments of instruction and joy, and our friendship and partnership in the gospel has been a sustaining source of goodness for me, and I wanted to share that with you. He was a pastor for me in 2020 when my father passed away. He even called me up and just said, "Ralph, how are you doing?" Sent me cards on special times, and I know he's done that for many of you as well. And he would just check on me sometimes. I remember the day when I received the phone call. It might have been the same day Leonard called him up. Pastor Bullock called him up about the call here to Grace, because Greg had remembered I'd been here for a little while. And what I did think when I heard that phone call, I just remembered my own struggle of leaving after being at a place like this, and of seeing Grace's faithful journey and struggle for years, and how it didn't go quite as well as you'd hoped after we had left. And then I realized this was an answer to prayer, that God indeed works. And so I saw that as a neat opportunity to see God. Greg and I have been associate pastors, so we know what it's like to get stuck with stuff. But we've also been lead pastors, and we've tried to somewhat not stick it to our associate pastors, but you got to learn somehow. And it's a gift. It's a gift, though, to have colleagues to work with. It's also a sign of a strong congregation, and because it fosters community and faithful leadership. And so thank you, Grace. Pastors are good and faithful, I think, because members are good and faithful. I thought about this. Maybe I haven't seen Greg without a beard. Have I seen you without a beard before? Okay. Yeah, because I was looking at the pictures in there, so that must have been a memory. I just dreamed about Greg without a beard one night, maybe. But I have seen him sliding down Sliding Rock with a bandana and a bathing suit. Okay, I've seen him without coffee. I've seen him laugh and cry. I've heard him preach and teach. I've seen him eat barbecue and ice cream. I've seen him exhibit both stress and wonder, but I've never seen Greg without a heart for the gospel, without a heart for caring and compassionate for other people, human beings in creation, or for church, or for each of you gathered here today, and for especially his family, Brenda, and all the loving children that he has, and now grandchildren that he lives for these days. And so, Greg continues to be a good shepherd, shearing in a good way, though, each of you, and feeding you and encouraging you, and he's encouraged me too. So much that I'm going to close with a song that I thought of when I thought of this day to day. A lot of us remember that song. I was, Here I Am, Lord. It's the story of Samuel being called and Eli, and he goes in there 3 times, and finally realizes it's God calling him. And we sing this song oftentimes to remind us of our own calling in baptism, to be God's people in the world. Well, I'm going to call this Here I Am, Lord, the sequel. What do you do when you're on the other side of the calling, so to speak? And I won't sing it for you. I thought about it, but I'll do the words and then we'll do the chorus. So think of Pastor Greg, and this is what he's thinking now. I have heard the yawns and sighs. I have heard your people cry. All who dwell in dark and sin, I tried to save. I who stayed up late at night, just to make their darkness bright. Who will bear God's light to them? Ann, Alfredo, or Ken? And then the chorus is, let your grace, Lord, fill this place, Lord. Let them know that all will be all right. I must go, Lord. Love and keep them. Guide their lives when I am out of sight. And then 2 more quick verses. God, I've seen the good and bad, gave it all the faith I had. Tending sheep is tiring work. They bleat and baa. But you grace me with their lives. Now I'm better and more wise. My heart is full, my eyes have tears, remembering the years. And then love's a gift for us to share. Help us share it everywhere. Families, friends, and strangers all, you fortify. Retirement is finally here. I think I'll go and drink a beer. Family fun and taking naps, that's where it's at. And then let your grace, Lord, fill this place, Lord. Let them know that all will be all right. I must go, Lord, but love and lead them. Guide their lives when I am out of sight. Thank you, Greg, and thank you all for your ministry.
Thank you so much, Pastor Hill. We can tell there's a true bond that is shared with these, and it's great to welcome you back and give us these words. But now we're going to have a special presentation for Greg. You and am I not on? Is it on now? Okay. The gifts that we have are gifts from your congregation, gifts from people who really care and love you and have done things that are special, handmade, and made for you. And the gifts that we have that are recognizing what you have done and been part of our family. First of all, we have our Grace Quilters who have made a special quilt for you. And each of the bags here on the table, or at least most of them, are from our prayer shawl ministry, for special shawls for you, your family, to use, to share, and certainly remember Grace. Our altar gill has a special gift, and this is your liturgical socks. You're known for really calm, mild socks, so here you have a collection that you can always remember us. The Sailor Circle has in one of the bags a special candle, and we have a tremendous basket of cards, letters, special remembrance, and special gifts from members of the congregation that want you to know how much we appreciate you, what you've done, both Greg and Brenda, for being our family for the last 16 years. Take this home, use this, remember us, and know that we love you and care. So all of the folks, let's have a special hand for everybody. And as I noticed today, the basket was certainly filled as people came into worship and came out for lunch. So guys, you know you're loved. At this time, we're going to take a special entertainment break. Folks, we need to enjoy this. It is a celebration. It's a happy time. And as Greg and Brenda prepare for those 6 days of Saturdays and a Sunday in retirement, they're going to have lots of times to relish this. So, Rod, Burton, it's all.
That's our beginning note, I think. Let's see if I can get this set back up. Okay. As long as the music doesn't blow away. Well, Burton was commissioned by the organization group to come up with a spiritual, hymn focused on some of Greg and Brenda's histories and travels and adventures in the past. All good adventures. We didn't take any of the bad ones. And we came up with this after great inspiration. Burton has put this together, and I'm pleased to put these words to music. But before we go on, thank you. And Brenda, thank you. We don't have a place for a flute on this piece, but the next time we'll get you, okay? All right, let's give this a shot. See if we can. If it's on. Burton is new at this, so we're That's it. Power chord, power switch. We'll get it. We'll get it. What we got here? It's a little cool. I could sing chestnuts roasting on open fire. Dreaming of a white Christmas. Hey, it's and it's nice in the sun. I think I'm ready. Ah, okay. Yeah, things are blowing away, so we have page turners, and he's getting all the attention. He deserves it. Okay. Whenever you're ready, Maestro. All right. Gastonia's such a lovely place to spend a holiday, and Hickory is nice, or so they say. There's good barbecue in Shelby and breweries in Boone, and it's always appeared that Asheville's kinda weird. But there's one place I recall with more fondness than them all. Oh, brief moment for costume change. Hold on. Now, you have worn many, many hats over the years, so we wanted to keep with that theme. And hold on. Oh, here we go. Oh. Okay. Hold on. This is difficult to get. Okay. To bring back memories for you. That's not the way. Who put Duke in here? Wait. Blue. No. Tim, is that for you? Okay. Wake Forest. Now you've heard mention, you brought that up earlier, that that's his alma mater, and no, it's not that cold. I think we will continue now in the spirit with Wake Forest, so keep that in mind. You're my cheerleaders. Okay. I left my heart in Winston-Salem. Yes, that's where it is. Near Silas Creek and RJR. To be where crazy demon deeks go running through the streets. Or were they streaking back then through the streets? Maybe they still are. The football team is a perfect 6-0, the first time since 1944. How to go? Let's have a cheer. Oh, I'm supposed to just go on. Okay. went to school in Winston-Salem, beneath the deep blue Tar Heel sky. Nothing about UNC, just Tar Heel sky, okay? When I come back to you, Winston-Salem, it's like we Weren't you supposed to play a note? Oh, the say goodbye. Congratulations.
Wow. I think the coach's sufficient. Oh, by gosh, 6-0. It's not even in your day in college were they that good. You know, as an old fraternity brother of Theta Chi, and I think Greg was a Theta Chi at Winston, we still remember the secret handshake. Now we are going to get into secrets. You've heard stories from Greg, from quite a number of sources. We truly are going to bring back his childhood from a dear friend of the family, Mrs. Patricia Smith. She has, I can't even read my writing, Phyllis, I'm sorry. Phyllis Smith will come up and really give you the true stories from Greg's childhood, just not that dirty boy that his mom couldn't recognize. So, Mrs. Smith, please.
I will tell you, these guys are a tough act to follow. But, Greg, last chance, buddy. Remember I told you that I'm not opposed to accepting bribes for silence. A little over a year ago, my youngest daughter, Tanya, turned 50, and it sort of shook me up a little bit because it told me about my age. Well, that was nothing compared to the earthquake I felt coming here for Greg's retirement. So, I ordered my rocking chair and my knitting supplies before I left home. Now, think about what this is for his mother, Pat. And I'll tell you a little secret. If you promise not to tell her I told you, she celebrated her 94th birthday on Monday. One Sunday in January of 1967, my husband Sidney and I walked into our little church in Laurinburg, and there sat a whole row of new people. There was Bruce and Pat and Greg, Brian, Eric, Ann, and Paul, and it almost doubled the membership of that little church. For us, it was the beginning of a friendship that welded our two families together forever. Well, Greg was a typical little boy, and yes, he was muddy, but he did the things that all boys love to do. And it was baseball and tennis and band and Eagle Scouts. But the one thing he really, really was an expert at was driving his younger siblings nuts, because he was the king of the roost, and of course, along with that came the right to tell them what to do. He thought, them not so much. Well, it wasn't long before along came our three girls, and the Williams kids were really sweet, even though they were a lot older. They played with them a lot. And we lived in an big old house out in the country my husband had grown up in, and we had more house than we did furniture. So the kids loved to race through the house making up gangs, and Greg was usually the leader of the pack. In fact, I've never quite forgiven him for the game of Ghost that they played, because when my middle daughter, Laura, was 2 years old, he would tell you the other kids convinced her that the ghosts were in her bedroom, and in her closet, and on the ceiling, and under the bed, and even on her back. Well, they went home most of the night for the next several months trying to convince her there were no ghosts there. It took a long time. Well, he redeemed himself a few years ago, later, a little bit, when he came to my rescue. I was making a Christmas ornament for our tree at church one night, and the knife I was using slipped and stabbed into my other palm, almost going all the way through. Well, Sydney was out of town, of course, so I knew I needed help, and I called Pat. She and Greg came, and she stayed at the house with my girls because they were asleep, and he drove me to the hospital to get patched up. Well, I am sure that that was not the highlight of his life, sitting in an emergency room all those hours waiting for me. But he did what he needed to do, which he has done countless times for all these years later. For many of you, and he truly has been a shepherd. When I asked my oldest daughter, Lisa, what she remembered about Greg growing up, she said, they wore bell-bottom jeans with patches. And I said, well, that's really sort of an odd memory. And then I thought about it later, and I realized that that's the way it was with our families. It was the seemingly simple, mundane things that marked our relationship. And when I asked Tanya what she remembered, she said, of course, my wedding. Well, yes, Greg was the minister who performed that wedding. When she and Massey, her fiance, called him, he said yes, and immediately began scheduling all of these long marriage counseling sessions. Well, Tanya called me and she said, is he really serious? I chuckled and I said, oh yeah, you can believe he's serious. So she was in Atlanta, Massey was in Greensboro, he was in Hickory. Now you figure out a schedule for marriage counseling. He must have done a good job because they recently celebrated their 23rd anniversary. So I didn't call Laura because she lives in Florida and I didn't want to fly down there and stay awake anymore chasing ghosts away. I watched him grow from a little kid into the wonderful, kind, loving man he is today. For almost 55 years. You see where he learned to cry. Our families have cried together through the sad times, and there were a lot of those, and rejoiced together in the happy times, and there were even more of those. And I'm here today, again rejoicing with Greg's family, and I can't think of any place I had rather be. Some of you may have read the little book, When God Winks, and the premise of the book is that there's no such thing as a coincidence, that God is in control, and he has a plan, and he winks when we think we do. Well, God winked big time when we walked in that church in 1967, and he had the perfect plan. And I'll collect later.
Thank you so much. Stories from the heart are the ones that really matter to all of us. And Mrs. Smith, thank you so much for sharing. We still think about the dirty kid, but there are a lot of other sides. And thank you for that. Right now, it's time for really that special time when Elliot and Rachel are coming up with a little remembrance of their dad and mom. So, Elliot, Rachel, it's all yours.
You can always count on the Williams family to cry. Happy, sad, we'll cry. Can't believe this day is actually here. So first of all, I want to thank all of you for this wonderful celebration for Dad and Mom. They've had 35 wonderful years in ministry. They make wonderful partners for each other, and truly something to be celebrated. I also want to thank you all for the last 16 years here at Grace, for all the love and support and encouragement and friendships you guys have offered our family. Elliot and I were actually in college when Dad was called here, so we didn't actually grow up here. And you guys have all made it feel like we did grow up here. And I know especially for me, this feels like it's always been my home. And I do look forward to continuing to be a part of Grace, because I am not retiring. So Dad was on his internship in seminary when I was born. So all I've known my entire life, and Elliot too, is being a pastor's kid. And we grew up moving around a little bit as we changed congregations. But we've been reminiscing a lot about over the years and stuff, and we were talking about, as we were kids, Elliot and I, kids, they like to mimic their parents' professions, and so Elliot and I, we would play church at home. We would pull the trash can over and use it as a pulpit, and we would put the Bible on there, and we would take turns preaching. We had a wood stove that we would that we kept a water bowl on top of, to keep the air moist. And we would baptize my baby dolls in the water. One time we got into Dad's communion kit, and we served communion. We had all the cups lined up with the wine poured in. I think that's about the point Mom walked in and stopped us. But we've definitely had some good times over the years. We've made lots of memories. We've had countless grandparents, surrogate grandparents at all of the congregations we've been a part of. And I'm going to let Elliot's the true storyteller between the two of us. His wife would disagree, I think. But I'm going to let Elliot tell a little more.
My wife's a creative writing major, which is why my storytelling is not up to snuff. She's not here tonight or today. She's the director of development for Charleston Habitat for Humanity, and they've got a big oyster roast, so she's in charge of that 400-person event and sends her wishes and misses all of this, and especially the kids who are not used to mountain weather. They're definitely beach babies. Before I go to some childhood stories that you will be surprised of that I'm still standing from, about 16 years ago, before I went to college, the phone rang, and I answered it, and I said, "Hello?" And they're like, "Hey, Mr. Williams?" And I was like, "Yeah, this is Elliot." But before I could get the Elliot part, the person started talking, and I quickly realized that it was someone from a call committee. When they said, I don't remember, they said, "I'm so-and-so from Grace Lutheran Church, just want to drop the phone down." And I go, "Mom?" And she goes, "Oops." So that's how I found out that there was conversations going on. The deal with me and Rachel, with Mom and Dad, was always, once we start high school, we're not moving. You can move. We are staying. And that was always the deal. Now, as Leonard said, they weren't looking to move. They had a great thing going in Hickory, and wonderful families and friends that we still keep up with there. But before we got to Hickory, me and Rachel were little kids. And little kids do things that drive their parents crazy, don't you? Yeah. I don't know that I can get all the stories, and they're not going to be in the right chronological order. But one of the funniest ones for me is when Dad flushed his church keys down the toilet. Now, he flushed them. I might have put them in the toilet and covered them with toilet paper.
But when it was time to go to church, he came in, saw that there was stuff in the toilet, flushed it, and we went to church. He couldn't find his keys and asked me where they were, so we drive back home, and I walk in the bathroom, and I point in the toilet. Again, he flushed his keys down the toilet. There was another Sunday, I believe Mom was out on a Via Cristo retreat, and me and Rachel were being quiet upstairs, and it's come to check on us, and I come walking around the corner holding one of those giant, like 64-ounce tubs of Vaseline. My hair is caked in it. Rachel's hands are caked in Vaseline. But Rachel, did you put Vaseline in my hair? No, of course not. Many attempts at washing my hair with extremely hot water and various types of shampoo, and it eventually came out. That tub still existed as of 7 years ago. They gifted it back to me when I got married. I have no idea where it is now, but it still existed. Mom was also at another retreat, and the only way to get us out the door so Dad could get to church in Gastonia on time was to give in to some things that I wanted, and one of them was I wanted dinosaur hair to wear to church. So my hair was spiked in various ways because it got us out the door and on time that Sunday. Oh yeah, three of my favorite, where there were phone calls to their house about my well-being. I stopped going up in, I think it was 3rd grade for children's time when Dad made us do the hokey pokey. But before that, children's time was also playtime for me and some friends. We had jumping competitions. The church, and most churches have a couple steps up where you do children's time, and there were about 4 steps, and so me and another little boy were having a jumping competition to see who could jump the furthest, and Dad was a good sport. He ignored that as much as possible, did his thing, and then the phone calls came. There was also the time that I tied his suture, whatever, rope thing to the stairs. So there, you know, they say different things about pastors' kids, and I feel like Rachel and I don't fit all of them. But we did most of our mischief when we were younger before we could really create a lot of havoc. The one thing I will forever be sorry for is eating all the donuts somebody had left out in Hickory for a thing after church. They were good. About almost 11 years ago, I had lunch with Bishop Bullock, and we talked about a variety of things, and one of the things he asked me was, have you thought about seminary? And I recently reminisced on this story with him, and I said, I've thought about it, but I know too much. and I felt a little bad about being blunt, but I think he knew where I was coming from to an extent, and I've seen the 2 o'clock, the 3 o'clock in the morning phone calls, the lack of vacations that you sometimes get, working the long weeks. And I'm a little too selfish for that. I like to have my flexibility when I can, and seeing the grace that Mom and Dad both go through with that scheduling, that sometimes this profession does cut into personal time and time away from family. But I know I'm looking forward to being a little more selfish with my parents. I've got some babysitting opportunities that you are more than welcome to fill. It's a little warmer in Charleston. He's got an empty calendar. Well, we'll talk, especially after you have 1 or 2 bottles, when I can fill that calendar up a little quicker. But the last thing I'll get to is, no, I did not go to seminary. I do work within the Lutheran Church in a different role within institutional ministry for now Lutheran Homes of South Carolina, working with their foundation. And before that, I worked with Lutheran Services Carolinas, which I know you're more familiar with. And I've had the opportunity to work with and walk beside a lot of pastors in North and South Carolina, many of which are colleagues, seminary classmates, and friends of my parents. I played college basketball with, he played college basketball. We played church league basketball when I was in college with Bishop Tim up in Boone. I worked at camp with Bishop Bullock's, one of his kids. But every time I meet somebody, like, Williams, you Pastor Greg's kid? I said, yeah. And they'd go on to say something about Dad. And it very much echoed what Pastor Hill said. There is a lot of folks that look up to you. I'm one of them. Well, I look down because I'm taller. But you get the point. But Rachel still looks up. But that's been the biggest joy for me, is getting to do what I do for a living and serve folks, and get to run into folks that have had a lifetime of interactions with my parents and hear the wonderful things they say about them. Mom and Dad brought a box of my baby things down about 2 years ago, and I went through them, and there were some some celebratory cards from when I was born from various people, and I flipped through them, and there's one from Pastor Tim and his wife Wendy. There's some from someone that ended up being a colleague of mine. Yes, honey. When am I going to be done? Your mom would say the same thing. I'm done now. It's been great watching what you do for the past 16 years. It's been more from a distance since I wasn't home, but it was looking forward to having you around a bit more. What do you want to say? You want to say anything?
Hold it.
You want to hold it? All right.
Dada!
All right. Let Rachel wrap up. All right.
So, Mom and Dad, are y'all up for an adventure? I believe that's the first thing y'all said to us, the first move we made when we were in Gastonia, and it was time to move to a new congregation. We are excited for this new adventure for you guys. I've been thinking a lot about how retirement will look for you guys, because I think being a pastor, retirement looks a little different. So a few things that I've thought of is you're never going to have to work on Christmas or Easter again. You can stay out as late as you want on Saturdays, because Sunday is no longer a work day for you. And you guys now have to decide, where are you going to go to church? We are really excited. Nick and Elliot and Kristen and I are all very excited for you guys and your new adventure, and look forward to being a part of that.
Thank you, Elliot and Rachel. What a wonderful, wonderful story of what it means to be PKs growing up with Greg and Brenda. Next, I'm going to ask our council president, Terrell West, to come forward. And as Terrell comes, Greg and Brenda, I want you to please come up as well. We have a little special presentation for the two of you.
I just told him it's a secret. They can't see the front of it. What we have here is an example of a life of giving to others in the community. The outreach program that we've seen in the last 16 years just mushrooms with this man and this woman. So the church said, if we got to remember this guy, let's remember one of the things that he thought was extremely important, and we share it. And that is the outreach programs for this community for those that have less than we. So the church has decided it will make an endowment. By the way, this is only a start. So if any of you wish to increase this and make it a contribution, please feel free to do so. So we have a Greg and Brenda Endowment Foundation. It's not inheritance money. It's just a thought. But we're so proud of what this man and this woman has done for us and our community. We thank God for him, and we wish him well. Both of them. We wish you well. So,
Pastor Greg, while you're here, we'd love to give you a chance to have a few final words.
One of the hardest things I've always had is just saying thank you. So I'm not going to say a whole lot. Just thank you. I'm tremendously humbled by today that we've heard on Via Christo retreats. You know, it's all for you, and just to have all of this done to celebrate ministry and me and Brenda, it is humbling, overwhelming. Thank you all for everything that's been done today, for friends throughout the years coming up and being a part of this, for creativity, for generosity, but most of all for your ministry, relationships, and faithfulness in this 16-year adventure together. It's been the best 16 years of my 35 years in ministry, even with the ups and downs that we always have. Thank you, Bishop Tim, longtime friend Bishop Bolick. Bishop Bolick said he talked me down from the tree. I was driving down for a meeting, and he said, I don't remember much out of that 45-minute conversation